Hello, I'm John Herbert. If you saw the first video, then thank you for watching. This is the continuation. We couldn't do it all in one go. I didn't want to go on forever. So this slide shows you what the book hopefully will look like. There's some 450 pages of manuscript on Dartmoor, ley lines over the landscape of Dartmoor. That's the subject. This slide shows you one of the ways I measure things, or in the past when I was in business, I questioned the why, the what, why, when, where, and how. If we're going to, can we afford it, for example? But putting that in terms of ley lines, we know the what, we know the when roughly, we know the how, obviously the where. In this particular case, it's Dartmoor, but we don't really know the why. In my manuscript, I've dedicated 35 pages in the conclusions to that question, and I've come up with an answer. And I'm going to give you that in 3 minutes later on in the video. So thank you for watching. We're going to go into a question and answer session now, because I think it's the quickest way to get through the questions I've had, and there's dozens of them. So there's going to be about 11 out of 35 or more in the manuscript. Thank you very much.
John, how old is the ley line system?
You're starting with an easy one, are you? Well, I think I know. Of course, it's not definite, but what I do know is the ley lines predate all the ancient historic sites that mankind back in those days built, such as long Barrows. They were one of the first, etc. So yes, it's still a guess in some respects, but I put it to the Neolithic age, the later Neolithic age, which can be somewhat between 4,500 and 3,500 BC. So, I think 4,000 BC is when it probably started. It started when mankind was comfortable living in settlements. They moved from being hunter-gatherers to farmers. And that must have happened in the late Neolithic, maybe mid to late Neolithic. And it's when they settled down, they had time to think about other things. And then, of course, came along ley lines. 4,000 BC, roughly. Thank you.
So why did you choose only to focus on Dartmoor?
An easy one. It is the largest area in southern England that's relatively unspoilt. Nowhere's been unspoilt, completely, obviously, but 364 square miles. The highlands of Dartmoor, if you can call it that, it's 240 square miles. And I think that it's a place I've visited many times. I've actually walked with two friends and my brother, 2 ley lines on Dartmoor, and we've hiked across various bits and pieces. And I love it. I love everything I've seen, and I love the Southwest. In my opinion, that's why all my stuff, all my work is concentrated in the southwest of England, because that's where, I mean, the old Celts were pushed to the southwest, and I just love it. The further southwest you go, the better it gets, in my opinion. So anyway, that's the reason.
So when did the ley system fall into disuse and decay, John?
Well, that was before the Romans came. I'm convinced that it was already in disuse in the late Bronze Age. The population had been diluted somewhat by the Celts. At least twice, 2 influxes from Central Europe. Celts came across, and although they integrated, and I don't want to go into integration, the Beaker people, some of them were called, preferred cremation to burial, and influenced the culture of the ancients in those days. They took on board the ley system because they had it in their country as well, or something similar. So I would say that it wasn't in use when the Romans came.
Can we be sure that the tracks were or were not the reason the ley system came about?
To begin with, I was a great advocate of Alfred Watkins. This is one of the 4 books I've got of his, of the old straight track. I have a first edition. Um, the man, I stand on his shoulders, and his colleagues and many other people have written about it. I stand on their great shoulders. I'm only a newcomer at it, but I have been an advocate of ley lines for many years, but a skeptic. And I dropped it for 45 years. I dropped it because I couldn't find any truth in it. But I have it. I have now, and the system. The system is not to do with tracks, old tracks. It became tracks, paths, tracks, roads, etc. later, but not the reason. It wasn't the reason.
So, how do you ensure total accuracy? And have you ever squeezed in a point or so here and there?
I don't. It's against not only my principles, but if somebody found out that I'd done that, I'd be dead. But in the water, no chance. I'd rather cut, as you will see in my manuscript. I cut from 6 to 5 and then delete it out of the examples, because mathematically you can have a coincidence. 3 for sure, 4 for sure, 5. It's like 250 to 1 maybe. 6, 1,000 to 1. I start at 6 main points.
How did you come to set your validated score before a ley line is proven then?
Well, that adds into the last answer. 6 main sites, 6, if you like, indicators, definites, for sure, and perfectly in alignment. You can't miss by 50 yards. You can miss by 10 yards maybe, but that's how accurate they were.
Uh, what was the real reason behind the need for ley lines then?
Okay, so we come to the why. I've dismissed the fact that they're not tracks, not originally anyway. And although I was a great advocate and still am of Alfred Watkins, if it wasn't for him, we'd probably be, be trying to rediscover him. And he was right to think that, because there was evidence of some of them being tracks, but that came later. Of course, it was a holy reason, it was a religious reason behind it. The motivation was to do with their beliefs. And I can prove it, well, logically anyway, using the sensible reasoning. Well, what did they do at night? They could see nothing but the stars and the heavens, the moon and the planets. They didn't know the difference between the planets and the stars back then, but they certainly they thought that, right, this is what it's all about. It's about the sun, the moon. The sun give of life. The moon lights up the night, and the only light they had other than that at night time was a fire, which they all sat round, but they could still see the stars. We don't have that contact these days as well, and I do believe that it's religion is behind it all.
Why have so many crossroads got the highest point around at the centre?
But, that's a great question, because I pondered that for years. It took me about 3 years of focusing on Dartmoor, the maps mainly, of course. Read all the books I could afford, and I came to a decision. Most weren't on ley lines, but the old ones were. Where there is a cross in the name of a crossroads, and also a stone maybe, or a high point, they are the crossing, literally, of 2 ley lines. That's the crossing point, and that's how they started. Crossroads, marketplaces in towns are based on the crossroads, and that's how they developed over the years.
And how do you explain the fact that a lot of the indicators on your examples are not of the same age or even millennium?
Well, that's thanks to the clergy, thanks to the church, I can answer that one. I, uh, yes, all right. So 1,000 years after even the ley lines were becoming into disuse, 1,000 years later, let us say six, seven, 800 A.D., the Christians came after the Romans, and they were challenged by the old religion. They saw it as a threat. So they did two things basically. They built on the ley lines. They built on the old pagan, as they called them, sites. I think it was in 601 that Pope Gregory the Great instructed Saint Augustus of Canterbury to repurpose old sites, not to destroy them, which is what they were doing for 100, maybe 200 years. So he said, build on them and attract, convert the people, the population, because they're attracted to that place. And that's common sense, isn't it? Thank you.
Uh, and can you tell me what is the difference between the two latest OS 28 maps?
That's a complicated question, but I'm going to make it simple because the difference between the early maps and this is a later. I don't have. I've got them, of course, but I've got about 15 of these maps. This is the maps of Dartmoor. They're accurate, but only from 2015 and 2021 editions, which these three are accurate. They must have been changed from the earlier leisure yellow cover maps, and now they have, at least I think they have used GPS global satellite positioning to get everything right over distance. So it was always okay over 5 miles. The 1 inch-to-the-mile map wasn't sufficient. I mean, this is why in the past a lot of the guys that have written so well about these things, whose shoulders I stand on, couldn't get it right because the maps are only as good as a lay hunter as the maps you use. Unfortunately for me, the 2021 edition of Dartmoor, which is behind me, is tremendous size, the biggest OS map I own, north, south, etc. It's the OL 28A, which is the south, and OL 28B, the north, on both sides of the map. It's huge. It's about this wide, and 2.5 inches to the mile. Fantastic map. Over 10 miles, it's accurate. It's 10 miles, 15 miles east to west between Brenttor in the west, on the edge of the moor, to Lustley in the east. It's 22 miles from Oakhampton in the north to Iverbridge in the south. And I can prove ley lines that length. But on the old maps, they didn't line up. These sites, if you started the north, south was wrong. If you started the south, the north was off. I was tearing my hair out at one stage, and of course, um, when the new maps came along, my goodness, I ditched a lot, about 7 or 8 lines, and I gained a lot. I went from 80 to 115. I've stopped at 115. There's more out there for you to find.
Right, this is my last question for you, John. What was the most significant finding you realised in writing this book?
I like that question. First of all, we've mentioned Alfred Watkins, my hero, of course. Yeah. I gave up on him. I'm sorry, Mr. Watkins. I gave up on you for 45 years, but now I've proven you right. There are ley lines out there. I can prove it on Dartmoor. It's the best canvas of all, of course. But the biggest significance was realizing that, even he, Alfred Watkins, realized that they weren't straight lines. They were used for tracks. They became tracks because, of course, the people used to worship these sites and they used to walk between them. But I don't think there were trading lines. Some of them became trading lines. Some of them became spiritual lines, for sure. That's probably how they started. So that was one of the most significant things, is realizing that purpose. There's no way you can go from from heights to peaks across the River Dart 3 times, which is one of the lines. You wouldn't be able to do it, especially not these days anyway. But it wasn't for that reason. So that was the first significant. But I also would like to just say, to round this off, that in my experience, the closer you get to any subject, the more you know. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Let's face it. But I had to say it, sorry. But the also at the same time, the closer you get, the more you don't know. Oh, and the more questions come up. And I still have questions within myself that are not in the manuscript that I have yet to answer, but I'm getting there. Thank you for that. This slide shows you the lay centres on Dartmoor. There's 14 lay centres on Dartmoor. That's the list of them. You can pause that for a second. And now there's the map. I'm pointing to the 14 lay centres. The 7 in the south and 8 in the north. And the lay centres are busy points. Quite a few stone circles, one would expect that, with more than 3, 4, sometimes even 5 lays, validated lays going through them. And on the previous list, you'll see, what was it, 5 plus 1 or 4 plus 2. The plus 2 means they're not validated lines. So take notice of the first figure. But for sure, even on Bodmin Moor, there's sites with 5 or 6 validated lines going through the stone circles. But it's not just stone circles. There's, as you can see in the previous slide, various points that are lay centres. So religion is the answer to the why. That's the one-word answer. But, of course, I've dedicated 30 pages plus to that subject alone. The question that everybody eventually asks themselves is, what happens when you die? What happens? What happens? And there's no difference between prehistoric man, woman, 6,000 years ago than us chaps today. We still ask that question. And of course, religion is supposed to have the answer. I don't want to go into my inner thoughts on that, however. But I can promise you that prehistoric man was convinced that the higher they buried their dead, the closer to the heavens they were, and the better the chance they have of ascending to the heavens, the stars. I mean, the ancient Greeks, particularly the Egyptians, believed in that. The pyramids supposed to have proved to be 12,000 years old because they have star chambers aligning to Orion, and Duval and co. proved that. But that's not the subject here. We know through logic and reasoning that they weren't old tracks. They were religious lines, spiritual lines. Thank you. And I'd like to thank you for watching this video. There's a slide on my other work, Lay Centres of the Southwest of England. There's 5 volumes. The 5th volume is proven to be a task which is incomplete at the moment. I've also started parallel a book on crossroads and I've called it liminal. I'll explain that if there is another video sometime, maybe later on. We hope to do a 3rd, but in answer to the questions you're going to give us, the crossroads of England, they are central to the towns, the marketplaces. The marked stones are still there in some cases, very few examples, which I intend to find and picture, and who knows what we can do in the way of a book later. Thank you for watching. Ring the bell if you like. Bye for now.